All right, welcome back to another edition of the Forts Athletics Life and Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Inferno, and tonight we have a very special guest, Olympic weightlifter extraordinaire, Noel Leka. Noel, thanks for taking the time to join us, man.
Absolutely, man. Glad to be here.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started in sports when you were a kid?
Yeah, so funny stories. I'm actually from Europe. I was born there, so really, when you're a kid in Europe, the sport that you pick up is soccer most of the time. That's the most popular sport. But we moved here when I was 11, and for some reason, I just never was really good at soccer. So when I went to high school, basketball was really my first love. But I had a couple friends that they were like, "Hey, you should play football just to kind of stay in shape for basketball." So played football, and then quickly realized I was way better at football than at basketball because I didn't grow and get taller to play basketball. So then football stuck with me, and that was really kind of my first introduction into weightlifting because of getting doing like football training and doing some slight weightlifting back then.
So where'd you move from in Europe?
Albania. So I was born in Albania. I moved out of there when I was 4. Lived in Greece for 7 years up till I was 11, and then moved here when I was 11 back in 2000.
Okay. So what do you remember about making that time? The reason why I ask is 'cause my parents were born in Sicily, so they came over. Like I say, my mom came over when she was a kid. She was 8, and then my dad came over after he served in the Army for 4 years. So he came over in 1976. So I joke with people like I was kind of close on being born there, and stuff. So what do you remember about coming to the States as I guess you were getting ready to go into middle school?
Yeah. So, luckily I was so young. At that age, you just kind of along for the ride, if you want to call it. But I do remember, on the airplane, we didn't speak any English. So they would ask us if we wanted like tea or coffee. And I'm like, I don't know what tea or coffee is.
Yeah, right.
So I just said coffee because that's the thing that popped in my head.
Right.
And I always vividly remember that. And I was, then that was like the first time I really had like coffee. And I knew what coffee was because of that. And then I remember when we first landed here, we would go through immigration, and there was a lot of paperwork that needed to be done and a lot of stuff. And I just remember feeling like completely lost in a way. Like I didn't know what was happening. Power to my parents, because they really had to kind of take the blunt of it, I guess you can call it, because they didn't know what they were doing either, but they were in their 40s when we moved here. So, power to them, but yeah.
So where did you move to, and then did you stay there, or did you like relocate once you came to the States?
Yeah, right into Largo, Florida.
Largo, Florida. That's not a bad place to go.
Yeah, right in the Tampa Bay, Clearwater area. My parents had a friend here, family friend, that was already living here, and it was kind of surreal because I remember the first time, like driving, to the beach, which is like 5 minutes away from me now. At the time, I was like, "Oh, I live in paradise."
Right
now, I'm just so used to it that it's just second nature. But yeah.
So you played football in high school, and you were introduced to Olympic weightlifting. So talk to us a little bit about what you remember from those experiences when you because when you were playing soccer as a kid, did you lift weights? Like, was that something that you did at an early age?
So I didn't, but oh, my light's gone off.
That's okay.
So I didn't, but I lived in Greece, and arguably maybe the best weightlifter of all time lifted for Greece, Pyrrhos Dimas. And a funny story about him is he was actually born Albanian, and then he had moved to Greece when he was in his early teens, and that's how he became a weightlifter there. So Greece does not compare to some of these other countries when it comes to overall sports. Obviously the US and Russia, some of these teams had a lot better overall Olympic teams, but they had that weightlifting team that was really good in the 90s. So anytime there was Olympics or World Championships, it was on TV. That's what the news was going to show. So I grew up watching him. So we were always in awe of watching him. I never really had thought about at the time to get into it. But it was a sport that I knew what it was. Like, you were familiar with the sport itself. And then getting into high school, I really kind of got lucky in a way, because one of my coaches, he had done a lot of Olympic lifting when he was younger, and he kind of introduced it to us. You know, you didn't do much of the classic lifts. It was mostly like power cleans to help your power with football. But that's really kind of where I got introduced to like the very, very basics of it.
So when did you first compete in an Olympic weightlifting competition from the time you started in high school there?
Yeah, my first Olympic weightlifting competition was April of 2018.
Okay.
So about 2 years ago.
2 years ago. So from the time that you started learning in high school, so how long was that before your first that competition in April of 18?
So it 10 years.
Okay. So it's been a little while. Okay. Yeah.
Started a little late. So it was it was, you know, high school, and then got out of high school and went through schooling and everything. Sure. Weightlifting was still not a big sport. Right. And then once you kind of, it's a very weird way I got into it, is because I ended up gaining a bunch of weight after high school, because you go through like your party stage and you have fun, and you know, it happens. And then I was like, I need to lose weight. So then CrossFit had became a huge thing back in like 2010, 2011, 2012. That's when CrossFit took off. Right. And that's really how I got into weightlifting, is because of CrossFit. So I started doing CrossFit. Obviously, I always knew I was a bigger kid. I was stronger. So I knew the weightlifting side is always what I kind of geared towards. Sure. And then one day I was like, I don't know how I'm going to go about it, but I want to do an Olympic weightlifting meet. And ended up having a friend that was kind of a coach, and they kind of helped me through my first one. And then at my first meet that I did, that's where I actually met my coach that I lift for now.
Okay. So when you joined at the CrossFit gym there, what box was it? Do you remember?
So started, it was called CrossFit, Seal Strong Cage CrossFit.
Okay.
It was a guy that used to be an old Navy SEAL, and then he was a trainer for the Navy SEALs. He would train people. So he opened up a gym, and he would kind of do both out of it. And then the more I got into it, I even ended up coaching CrossFit at another gym called CrossFit TFB.
Okay.
And that's really kind of when I decided I wanted to do weightlifting and get into a weightlifting career.
So when you were coaching and training at the same time, when did you realize like I might actually like be good at this? Because from your first competition to last year, I mean, you've been on the podium. So it's
I took off. So it was great. So yeah, I would do CrossFit competitions, and every CrossFit competition a lot of times would have some kind of strength portion of it, right? A workout that has you find a 1 rep max of something.
Sure.
And I quickly realized, I'm like, I'm not winning the competitions, but I am getting like first or second place in the strength movements.
Right.
So I quickly realized that I was like, I'm pretty good at this. And that's when the idea started popping in my head. I'm like, I really should do a weightlifting meet and kind of see what it's like.
So when you did that first one, if you remember, like what did you just like show up? Were you like, did you kind of have a plan in place with your coach? Like what was like the first meet jitters like?
So it was the coach that I had. I was her first athlete at the time.
Okay.
So she really was a very, very novice coach. She helped me a lot. I mean, preparation wise, just programming, but I didn't really know how to prepare for a meet. I didn't know, what I should do the day before the meet. Should I rest? Should I not rest the day before? Should I do something? So I wasn't really 100% sure on that. Obviously it was a local meet. So I really just showed up like 4 hours before I was supposed to even weigh in, and I was hanging out.
Sure.
And, really didn't have much. And it's crazy how in a 1 year or 2 year period, I can completely like read my body now. And I know exactly what my body kind of needs to be able to perform at a national level stage instead of just a local competition that I was doing.
So with that first meet, you had the weight classes change? Because you compete at 105 now, right? I'm
a 109 now.
109. Okay.
But at the time, it was still a 105. 105. So I was an over 105. And literally the weight classes changed like a couple months after that.
Okay. So what do you remember most about that meet? Like, was it like, did you hit a big snatch and you were like, like I'm going to continue with this? Or was it like, oh, wow, I don't know, I'm going to take some time in between and trying to figure this meet stuff out?
So I remember the high that I got from it. So I went 6 for 6 on my first meet. And so the thing for me that's kind of different from most weightlifters that you see is I intentionally squat jerk. So I only squat jerk. I don't split jerk. I don't power jerk. I intentionally squat jerk. And obviously, especially in the local meet, 99% of the time they haven't seen that. So what I remember is doing my first squat jerk on the platform, and it goes from completely quiet to just so it was like a very weird sounding, like, and then at that point in my head I'm like, I'm pretty good at this.
Right.
You know, I got a thing for it. And from that point on, I got hooked from that little moment. And when that meet was done, I literally probably went on my phone that same night looking for another meet that I could do. And my coach literally had to ground me and say, no, there's a science behind this. We don't just go to as many meets as we can. And then we went from there.
So when you were looking for your second meet and you're trying to figure this stuff out, what like, did you stay local in Florida there when you competed, or were you like, did your total at that time, did you qualify for like an American Open series, or did you
qualified for an AO1? So my first total ever was 281, 281 kilo total.
Wow.
Which doesn't, but it didn't qualify me for seniors or anything like that. So at the time, but my total did qualify me for AO1, but my second meet was actually state championships, Florida state championships. And Florida has what they call Florida Elite, which is kind of, in an easy way to put it, the best 10 lifters, 10 male lifters, best 10 female lifters in Florida. They get to be part of Florida Elite, and you get kind of a stipend you get money towards your competition, towards senior nationals, and you compete for the state of Florida. They put a team together. That was like my 3-year goal at the time. You know, it was qualify for seniors at some point, and then maybe a 3-year goal to be a Florida Elite athlete. And then I did state championships was my second meet, and then things just kind of took off a lot quicker. My totals kept jumping a lot quicker than I was expecting them to at the time.
So you qualified, so you were part of the Florida Elite team after your first competition total? You were
not after my first. So I did, So I did my first meet, which was local, and then went into states, state championships. I got third at the time in the state of Florida. And then I had decided my next meet was going to be AO1, American Open 1, and it was the Arnolds, and this was last year's Arnolds.
So 2019.
2019, yeah. And then that was kind of my breakout meet. So when I first started lifting, or when I first started competing, every meet that I was doing, I was kind of PRing every meet. So I would open up at my last meets, like PRs, I would open up my next meet.
Wow.
So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know why. I think because I could see my body, like I knew I had those weights. But anyway, so I went to AO1, and that was really my breakout meet, because I went 6 for 6, but I totaled 320 at AO1. So within less than a year time, I put about 40 kilos on my total, and that qualified me for seniors in Florida Elite.
So like, for somebody who's just like, wow, like you've been lifting for like a year, and all of a sudden you're qualifying for senior nationals, you're on the Florida Elite team. Like, what do you attest that to? Like, how, I mean, it's not like luck. Like, I don't believe in that stuff. Like, you know, like lucky totals or lucky this. Like, how, like, how do you? I don't know. Maybe it's too loaded of a question, but you went from a local
we've all
meet
hit
to
lucky lifts, right? We've all hit a lucky lift here and there, and we've all had a chance to where it just worked out that way. But at the same time, in order for you to hit that lucky lift, so many hours of just training goes into it. So is it really lucky at that point, right? It's not. But it's really, I fell in love with the competition. So I love the sport and I love the training, and a lot of people can sit here and say, I just love the grind and love the training, and yeah, it's fun, but at the same time, it hurts a lot.
Right.
So I can't say that I always love it. I'm always pushing myself to do it. But to me, it was in my head, that idea of stepping up on a podium at a senior, competition. I would watch world championships or even nationals. I would watch them and I would see how very structured they are. And you see the banner in the back and there's monitors in the back instead of just, a white wall where you're lifting. In a national meet, you have like sponsorships and everything. So it looks like a big deal. And kind of that was a driving force. That was a driving force. Like that was the reason why I pushed myself in training so much. And, why I pushed so much is because that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to be. And, there was some lucky lifts in between, but there was the work put in. Better believe that.
So when you show up at the Arnold, right? Like I'm so disappointed that this year with what happened. Like I've never been there before, and like we had tickets, like we had everything, all planned out. So when you show up there, like what do you? Are you like in awe, or are you like, no, I belong here? Like talk a little bit about the process, like the couple days leading up to, because I mean, you're in Florida, so you have to travel up there, right? So you have to take into consideration, airfare, what that does to your body, like all that stuff. Like how, like the few days leading up to it, what was that like?
Yeah, so I'm huge into like a lot of people, even any national competition, they'll get there either the day before or a couple of days before they compete. I'm big into like acclimating myself in a situation. So I think last year we got there on Monday and I didn't lift till Sunday.
Okay.
So we got there either Monday or Tuesday. I don't remember exactly, but I got there super early, because I didn't want to take that chance. I wanted to acclimate myself just being there. And then I remember the first day I was completely in awe because I wasn't used to it. I was used to, you show up in a local competition, you weigh in, you lift, you get your medal, you're done.
Right.
Whereas of now, you go in, you have to check in, you get your lanyard, you have to wear your lanyard the whole time when you're walking around. So it feels official, right? And then the first day you get to go to a training hall and train in the training hall. But that first day in the training hall also was the day that I kind of told myself, calm down, like you belong here, because I was lifting in the training hall and I saw other people looking at me just like I was looking at them. So I was like, okay, like you belong here, just have fun with it now. And from that point on, it was kind of, you got to be a little cocky to be a weightlifter. So at that point, it was like, yeah, I'm just as good as anybody that's lifting next to me.
So with your coach, when you're there and your team and things, how far in advance did you figure out, okay, these are going to be my openers, this will be my second attempt, this will be like my third attempt? Like what kind of, like, because I used to compete in powerlifting, like I try to, so you're at a meet, there isn't really as much gamesmanship, like I'm going to go up a kilo, okay, I'm going to go up another kilo and thing. Or powerlifting, you have a minute to decide, okay, well, this is my next bench attempt, this is my next deadlift attempt, so you really can't do that. So when you're talking with your coach about that, how did you decide, I'm going to open with my last snatch, my third attempt from Florida championships, I'm going to open with that at the Arnold, or did you try and play it a little safer? Like what was the goal leading up to the,
so before Arnold's, I did another local competition in Florida.
Okay.
I think it was in January. It might have been either January or December of that time frame. Just as like I wanted more platform time. I did not want AO1, my first national meet, to be like my third meet. I wanted just to fill in the platform.
Right.
And I intentionally decided to open up pretty heavy on that. And I think I opened up at like 130 snatch, and like a 150 clean and jerk, which 150 clean and jerk was still like a decent opener for me then. But I snatched 140 there. And I remembered how easy I snatched 140. Soon as that competition was over, as soon as that meet was over, I told my coach, I'm like, I want to open up at these numbers at AO1. And on that meet, I hit 140, 160.
Right.
And I was like, I want to open at these at AO1. And he said, if you hit each one of these lifts at least 5 times before AO1 in training, and as long as without having to walk them out, like you have to hit them like an opener,
right,
then you can open at that. So yeah, I opened up at my like last meets totals, but I had still hit that,
sure,
you know, that 140 snatch maybe 5 or 6 times before I even got to AO1. And that's kind of how we decided, you know, the game, that's kind of the opener is what we talk about. The game plan normally for me on snatches is 5 kilo jumps.
Okay.
Clean and jerks, you know, I'll take my first and second will probably be 5 kilo jumps, and then you leave kind of some room that if you have to take a bigger jump, you can. Or if you can be conservative, then you can. So kind of in Olympic lifting, that game plan can just alternate so quickly. Like it could, you know, in 2 seconds, you could be like, I'm following myself and I just took a 5 kilo jump and I haven't even gotten to rest for 30 seconds yet.
Right.
So
when you're there on the morning of, I've never competed in an Olympic weightlifting competition. So you weigh in, is it a 2-hour rule, like a 4-hour rule that you weigh in?
2-hour weigh in Olympic lifting.
So you get there and you weigh in and you make, you know, you're in the it's 109 plus then, right? So you don't have to worry about cutting.
I was good.
Like
so I ate a whole pizza the night before.
so you're not cutting weight or anything. So you don't have to worry about that sauna stuff. So so when you get there that morning and or when you're ready to compete and stuff, what, you know, you said you kind of need to, you know, maybe have a little chip on your shoulder or be cocky with it. How, like, does that just come because you hit the lifts so often and training? Like you said, like a lot of like what Instagram and social media, right? So people always post, you know, for the most part, they always post like the, you know, the highs, and they don't post like how many misses they had or how many times they had this or how many times they had that. Does that, like, do you attribute part of the success to that? Like, you know, I already hit it 5 times, so I should be good here, you know, until you walk out and then there's all these cameras in your face and you have to open, right? Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a thing is when I wake up in the morning, it's kind of, if I can feel my legs, because obviously weightlifting is mostly legs, right? If I wake up in the morning and I feel like a little twitch on my legs, if I feel my legs just feeling kind of energized, then I know it's going to be a good day. It's a very strange feeling, but I woke up that day and I remember walking out of bed and my legs just felt just the right amount of like energy with rest. It felt weird. But I remember walking up to my coach and in the morning, because we shared an Airbnb, and I was like, it's going to be a big day today. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, I feel my legs, like my legs feel good. And this is like 8 o'clock in the morning and I don't lift till like most times like 4 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. And once you get there, I feel like for me, especially because I've competed in both. I've competed as you know, 109 plus, and I've cut to under 109.
Okay.
As a 109 plus, the thing that kind of drives me is normally I'm either the smallest 109 plus or one of the smallest.
Okay.
And knowing that I'm gonna competing with or possibly beating some guys that are coming in weighing in at like 150, 160 kilos.
Right.
I'm going in weighing in at like 112, 113. And, you know, I'm either snatching the same as them or out snatching them. So that kind of drives me. It's kind of that's kind of like, if you want to call it a chip on my shoulders. If I see somebody, you know, as a super, it's kind of what drove me. I remember that very well. Like looking at people weighing in, I'm like, man, these guys look like monsters.
Right.
But I'm throwing down the same numbers as they are. So I'm fine.
Right. So when you get on the platform for your first attempt and, you know, talk a little bit about how that day, you know, progressed, because you did really well. You podiumed, right?
Yeah.
You know, so in almost like a year, you've gone from local weightlifter to earning a medal at the Arnold Classic. You know, like how, like, I just think that's awesome. Like, I'm sorry, like, I don't know if it's like, I don't want to sound like, you know, fanboy or something like that, but like the more, well, the more I talk to people like you, it just, like, I think sometimes people take it for granted that, well, you know, Noel just showed up and he's like this phenom, but I think like there's so much more to it. And that's what I find like so interesting. Like, you know, like I was talking to somebody the other day whose parents immigrated from Cuba in the 70s. And he was like, yeah, man, he's like, that was just like the work ethic. Like, you just work hard and like, you know, it's just ingrained because that's what, and like me too, like my dad worked on an assembly line for 25 years. Like, he never complained. Like, So for me, I'm like, well, I have to do this, right? Like my dad
Right.
went through, like, is there anything like, do you bring any of that, like being born in a different country, like just the different experiences, like, does that help you on the platform? Like, kind of get ready?
That's such a good question, because and it's so cool to like listen the way you say it, to like listen to somebody that's from another country. So coming from coming from Europe or Albania, so the country itself, when I was born anyways, I didn't get to live it very much, but my parents did. It was under communist, it was a communist country. So what the other person's parents in Cuba would have went through, completely very, very similar. When we lived in Albania, we were very lucky. My dad was in the movie industry, so we were actually one of the families that was kind of more well off than other families. We never had to struggle. And then in Greece, kind of the same thing. But then when we moved here, it was a completely different story, because my dad, you might have degrees over there, they don't really carry on here. My dad was in his 40s. It's kind of tough to go to school at the time. And from the age of 11, when we first moved here, till about 19, I saw my dad work 2 jobs 7 days a week. He would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, go to work, come home at 2, sleep for 2 hours, wake up at 4, go to his other job, work from 5 to 11 at his other job, and then come home, eat, and go to sleep. So for 7 years, for 8, 7, 8, 9 years, I saw my dad do that. And I also saw my mom put herself through school just so she could become a hairstylist. So it wasn't even, I can't say that it was embedded from me by then. I feel like it was just, they didn't have to teach me. I think it was just me watching them. I feel like as I got older, I really got the full understanding of it. So then, even though I got into weightlifting at an older age, I feel like that work ethic, that just, we're just going to show up every day and just do it. It was instilled in me because I had seen it already from my parents. So that's such a weird but very cool way to like say you hear from somebody else. And it's like, yeah, I feel like everybody that's immigrated here from another country, not saying anything against from people that were obviously born here and Americans through generations, but I feel like people that have migrated here from like some poor countries around the world, they really know, they can really see the difference and what it takes.
Well, it's the same thing. Like when my mom came over, she was 8 in 1964. So my grandfather, he started working in a factory right away here. At, Kodak was a big thing here in Rochester. And then after a year of doing that, he got another job working at there was like a butchery where they did like pigs and cattle and stuff. So he would work his night shift at Kodak from 11 to 7. And then he would go 11 at night to 7 in the morning. And then from 7:30 until 3, go work at the other job. And as kids, he would, every once in a while, he'd share these stories about, we'd complain about homework, my brother and I, and he would, let me tell you what, like real work. And it took until we were in college to like really appreciate those stories of, this is like, you do what you have to do and whatever it takes type of mindset. So it's just so interesting and fascinating.
That's so cool. That. That's so crazy to hear.
But
that's very cool to hear.
So you're at the Arnold and you do very well. So tell us about what you did well in the snatch, clean and jerk. Like what were your thoughts after the competition? Because you did like I said, you had a very good day.
So so I go, I snatch 150, I clean and jerk 170. So I mean, these are numbers that for me were I can't even say that were really a goal at the time. I mean, they were numbers that I thought were not going to be possible for a couple of years. And I remember the next day at the airport, I have my medals in my backpack. I don't even want to like see them at this moment because I'm on cloud 9. So I tell I'm talking to my coach and I'm like, dude, 160 snatch is next. Like my idea is like a 10 kilo jump of snatches. And he's like, calm down for a second. He's like, you just hit probably the biggest PR of your life. He's like, you could be reaching a wall to where from now on your PRs are 1 kilo here, 1 kilo there. Maybe you won't even jump sometimes in a year. And and then that had to be a little wake up call for me. So,
in that
I'm
18
glad he
months,
told me that.
I mean, you jumped 80 kilos almost, right? You
Yeah.
went from, so
Yeah.
after Arnold, how long was it before you competed again?
It was very quick because I had to do so last year Arnold's and seniors were like 2 months apart.
Okay.
So Arnold's was in April or March, and seniors was in May. So it was not a crazy amount of like time in between them.
So go ahead. Sorry.
So that's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
So that conversation with your coach there at the airport, then what was kind of like the strategy then going in the senior nationals? Like, so you kind of talked about that 160 snatch. Was your idea more of like, I don't know, because like, in coaching, like I coach throwers, like some meets that we go to, like I've had really successful athletes where all right, we're going to go and try and hit a PR at this meet, because even if you don't, you're still going to win by like 5 meters in the hammer or whatever.
Yeah.
Other meets for like the not as talented throwers, it's like you got to go balls to the wall, like from the first throw, just to give yourself a chance to possibly make the finals. In your case though, like was that even like, were you even thinking about that a week? You're back from a week, like you lived it up in Columbus. Are you like, okay, we got to go all out here at senior nationals, or I don't need the PR to do well and get on the podium again? Like now, because now you're good. People know who you are, right? You can't just like show up like at a local meet and like, who's this guy?
People,
snatching 150. Like, people don't just do that.
Yeah.
So those 2 months leading up to it, was it more of, all right, let's see if we can kind of replicate the Arnold numbers, or we want to try and, maybe go for the 10-kilo jump in the snatch?
Yeah. So for me, seniors to me felt, well, first of all, normally, like if you do a big meet, so like I had peaked for Arnold's, I had the perfect peak for it. Right. Everything felt perfect. So I had such a high. The next day I tell my coach, I'm like, I want to go back into training right away. Like, I don't want to take a week off. Like I don't need time off. And he agreed with me because he knew what it was going to feel like.
Right.
And then I get back, I think it was like, I competed Sunday, I took Monday off and Tuesday. So I went into Wednesday and I only had like 70% work, and it felt like it was the heaviest thing I've ever moved off the ground. And I text him after and I'm like, dude, what is going on? Cause I'm a remote athlete too. So my gym's 2 hours away. So I'm remote, right? So I'm texting and I'm like, man, I felt like crap. Like, it shouldn't feel like this. I'm like, I just snatched 150. Why does 120 feel heavy?
Right.
And he's like, because you just went in there. He's like, you ate all this food. And he's like, now you're full, dude. He's like, you got to get hungry again.
Right.
So
that's a great analogy.
So then it kind of, my mentality kind of went to, I want to, from having fun, from like enjoying, like, wow, I get to be at a national stage.
Right.
Now it went to like, I got to perform. Like, it's all about, now it became so serious. So I was like, nope, I need to open up heavy. I need to medal. I need to do this. I need to do that. And I very quickly forgot the aspect of actually enjoying the fact that you're at a national competition. So we decided, I didn't even know if I was going to be an A session or B session lifter at the time. I signed up, I put my total. When everything comes up, I end up being an A session lifter. So to me, in my head, that just puts extra pressure now. Right. And it all became about me putting pressure on myself instead of kind of, let's have fun. And we decided, I'm a way stronger snatch on the snatch. So we decided to open up snatch at like 145 instead of 140 that we just opened at Arnold's. And I hit my first one really good. And that's what got me a silver medal. I got a silver medal on my first snatch. And then I got called for press out on 150. And then I missed 152 just a little bit in front. So I went 1 for 3 on snatches. And I quickly got hit with I remember sitting there between the break and I'm like, why am I not having fun? Like, I'm not enjoying this. Right. And then I thought to myself, I'm like, you need to smile. So, and then I ended up opening my clean and jerks at 170, which was my third attempt at Arnold's, but I knew that I had room on my clean and jerks. So even though we didn't have a good snatch day, I had a PR. I hit a 170, then I hit 175 clean and jerk, which is a 5 kilo PR at the time. So even though like that didn't go as planned, I guess I got 5th overall. I mean, I got a second place snatch medal. Who's going to be mad at that? Right.
Right.
But yeah, so it was a kind of surreal moment because I feel like I put too much pressure on, not pressure, I put too much seriousness into, I need to compete, I need a medal, instead of, I love what I'm doing, let me just have fun doing it.
You know, Noel, I apologize so much. Can we pause this for a second? I think one of the kids is upstairs, and I need to go get it. I'll be right back in a second.
Take your time, man.
Gosh, I'm so sorry. All right, I'm sorry. We so my wife and I, we have a soon-to-be 7-year-old, a soon-to-be 5-year-old, and a 2.5-year-old. So I have the baby monitor down here. So sometimes he can't find his pacifier, so he starts flipping out. I know this whole Corona. Well, we don't have to get to the Corona stuff now, but I'll just we'll get to that in a second. But
yeah.
So your senior nationals competition. So you go off again. You earn you silver medal on the snatch on your opener. After the meet, then are you thinking like what else? Not what else do I need to do, but do you start putting a plan in place for like this year's seniors, or because you're one of the elite weightlifters in the U.S. for your weight class. Like what do you what's next? Like after that, are you starting to think of maybe I shouldn't compete as much, maybe only like 2 or 3 meets, or
so
like
that
high after that meet?
That became the tough thing, right? So when we got done, so that was my club's first national senior medal. We've had national medals, but like senior championship medal, that was obviously my first, but that was my club's first too. Shout out USAW Weightlifting. But so to me, things start popping in your head, like not necessarily think you're better than what you really are. But so at the time at seniors, I weighed in at 122. And I'm like, I just got second place with people that are like, almost twice the size of me. Like, that's not fair. So I kind of got in my head and I'm like, I want to drop weight. So that's when I decided to drop down to a 109.
Okay.
And I wanted to compete as a 109 because I'm like, if I'm going to I can compete better with the 109s. And I didn't think about, what that might do to my body, or how long it might take me to get adjusted at a lower weight class. Because I was 122, and I mean, we're talking about like 10, 11 kilos that you're dropping. That's a lot of mass.
Right.
So I started my drop, and my next competition was Florida State Championships. And the only reason I did that is because, just kind of like what teams will put a team together for nationals, clubs can put a team together for states. And obviously my club put a team together, and I'm like, I got to live for my club. And obviously I go into states now thinking it's either gold or nothing. Like, I got to win, you know what I mean? And I had dropped, I think at the time I weighed in at like 113 or 114. So I had dropped already a good amount of weight, but without doing it without a nutritionist. Still didn't have a nutritionist. I just calorie deficited myself. I was not eating enough. And I go in there, I decide to open up at like crazy heavy weights at 145 snatch. And I bomb out. So then I have my first bad meet, right? So I'll bomb out, something that as a weightlifter, you really try not to think about.
Right.
And so that was a wake-up call for me. That was a real huge wake-up call. So bomb out there, and that's when really I had to kind of take a step back and really figure out what I wanted to do.
So that's a huge cut. I mean, like as a powerlifter, like you can compete at it's like 125, and then you could go down to like 110. So 275, 242. So those are massive jumps. So when I was younger in my 20s, you could, you weigh 265, you could cut down, like you're dumb, think about like that stuff. So you in the middle of this cut, then was there somebody that was kind of like, hey, Noel, you might not be able to open at the same weights because you weigh less? Like, was there anybody that was kind of like helping you out?
All my coaches.
All your coaches. Okay.
All of them.
Right.
I was just, again, I had got in my head to the point that, you know, I guess maybe as an athlete, that's like the toughest thing that you can admit sometimes. Um, but I got in my head way more than I should have. Like, yeah, you got to be cocky a little bit to be a good weightlifter, but you cannot be cocky enough to where you lose respect of what you're doing. You're putting massive amounts of weight over your head. It's not like, you know, it's not an endurance sport. It's you're outputting for that one max, you know, snatch or clean and jerk. So I really thought I was a little bit better than I really was at the time, or well, my capabilities were a little bit better than what I thought. And, you know, for me, that was a wake up call.
Did you compete in the clean and jerk too, or did you just call it at that?
I did.
That time?
Yeah. So yeah, my coach is like, yeah, we don't believe in not clean and jerking.
Sure.
So I did. And then I hit one of my clean and jerks. I saved one of them.
So was that your so 1 for 6? So that would be your
1 for 6.
1 for 6. Yeah. So after that state meet, then when was that? Like, was that in?
That was July of last year.
July of last year. So from July of last year to now, I think I'm guessing you were probably going to compete at Arnold again a couple of weeks ago, right?
I did. I competed.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking. Sorry, that was going to be the next question. Sorry. So you competed at Arnold. So between states, did you have another like tune-up meet, or were you just thinking?
Yeah, give you a little quick brief down of kind of what happened. But so essentially, I bomb out at states. I was going to take a pretty long time off. I told myself, I want to focus on weightlifting. I want to focus on the ability to train. I wanted to have a long training cycle. I let a friend get in my head. They're like, you should do AO3. AO3 was in September, and it was a local meet in Florida. So it was done in Daytona. So AO3 last year was in Daytona. So he's like, dude, you got to compete in Daytona. You know, that can be like your comeback meet. My birthday's in September. That's like your September meet. I'm like, you know what? Like, let's do it. And for that one, I cut down to actually 109. So I signed up as a 109. And I go to open up my snatch at 140, and I bombed out that meet too. But I bombed out that one because of a slight like shoulder injury that I had.
Okay.
So I picked up a slight shoulder injury in my first snatch. I still decided to go out for my second and my third snatch. When I missed my second and my third, like you can see the lifts actually look good. It's just my shoulder, the pain that I was having on it, just couldn't hold on to the weight. So my coach is like, yeah, you're not going to go out and take any clean and jerks at that time. So took that off. And then I did AO1 was going to be, Noah, let's go back out. Let's go AO1. That's your company. You know, that's going to be my one that I can say I'm back. But I did do a local meet as a tune-up meet. We went super conservative. I just needed to get a total and a platform time and a total.
Sure.
Opened up, I think like 135 or 137 snatch, which very doable. So I took small jumps. I snatched 145 there, and I clean and jerked 170. And then I didn't even take my last attempt on the clean and jerks. I just scratched it because it wasn't even about a medal for me. I mean, I won a medal there with my openers. It was just about getting tuned up. And my coach is like, let's save your last attempt for AO1. And everything started happening.
So this Corona stuff happens, and you know, we were kind of talking about it. I mean, I'm so bummed. Like the 1 year, because coaching track, we usually have like a tune-up meet before like the indoor national competition. So this was the first year that I wasn't coaching at a college, and my one of the kids that I coach post-collegiate, he lives in Ashland. So he's like, oh, coach, come down. We'll live it up in Ashland. It's like 45 minutes to Columbus. You know, we'll go to Rogue. We'll do all this stuff. So when did athletes find out like about, because I saw it on, I know Arnold's Instagram post on Tuesday, 2 days before, where he said, yeah, we're not having it anymore. I was like,
that's when we found out.
Wow. So 48 hours before like the actual competition is supposed to happen. So were you already in Columbus when like that happened?
I was not. So I had planned out to go to Columbus on Wednesday.
Okay.
So normally competition at AO1, AO2, AO3 will start on Thursday, and it'll be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Right.
This year there was so many athletes, they had to start the competition on Wednesday.
Okay.
So we actually had an athlete that was competing on Wednesday. So he didn't find out that people were not allowed to be there until the day before.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, and he was already there, I think. So, I mean, his family was already there, whoever was going to go watch him. So I remember I was halfway through training, and I normally don't try to check my phone too much. The only time I pull up my phone is when I'm going to video, when I'm going to do some videos. I go to pull up my phone to pull up a video, and it was Tuesday, so I was hitting my openers, because on Tuesdays, normally I hit my openers if I'm competing on a Sunday. So I was hitting my opener, so I'm excited, and I probably like 40, 50 text messages. I couldn't even count them. It was just, my phone was like completely
right.
So I look at it, and everything has to do Arnold's canceled. So at first, when I first looked at them, I thought the whole thing was canceled. So I missed like all my openers in training.
Right.
That's not a good thing.
Right.
And then like I get on the phone with coaches and everything, and they're really explaining the situation to us after that. So I didn't get to like really kind of calm down from it until about, an hour after training. And normally I train in the afternoon. So probably like 10:30 is when I really kind of got to sit down and find out exactly what was happening.
So that from that time, then were you still able to fly up there? Or did you didn't have to drive, did you, to Columbus?
No. So yeah, it's a 2-hour flight. So it's not a bad flight. They weren't canceling any flights or anything. So if you were still going, you could still go.
Sure.
Athletes could still obviously go. Even family members, whoever still wanted to travel, they could.
Right.
They just, no spectators could get in.
Right.
So, obviously, my family kind of got lucky. Like I had my sister that goes to all my competitions. She was able to cancel her ticket, and kind of a bunch of other people were able to cancel their tickets, so they didn't have to come up. And then I got there, I believe, Wednesday afternoon.
So this is like one of those freak things. Like I just turned 30 in February. You're much younger than I am. So we're probably never expected that we would be living through something like this.
Right.
So you get there, and there's going to be nobody, or minimal people in the stands. And when I talked to some of my friends that were there that competed in Highland, they had like their best performances ever, because they didn't have to worry about like fans or spectators, like people asking them for autographs and pictures all the times and things like that. So was this, so for you, did you have to, like, was it difficult to wrap your head around, my support system's not going to be there, or was it just like the kind of business as usual?
So the first thing is, your first reaction is always like crazy disappointment, right? Because the only thing you think about at the time is you're kind of selfish in the moment, and you just think about, I put all this work in. I've been training, 4 or 5 hours a day, and I'm doing six days a week right now to get ready for this, to peak for it, and all these things go through your head, and then you're just like, well, I'm just going to show up on the platform. Nobody's going to be there to watch. Some people love the fact that not a lot of people are going to be there. I'm kind of the other way around. I feel like the more people are watching, the more I feel like I have to perform. So it kind of gets your mind of how heavy this weight is going to feel, because you're going to have to do it anyways.
Right.
So, but you can't miss because people are watching. And Arnold's, I remember last year, it was packed, man. It was like stands, and people were like, you couldn't see anything else other than just people in front of you. So that's the first thing that goes through your head. And then once you get a chance to kind of just let it sit, kind of break it down, you kind of stop thinking about just yourself, and you think about the overall situation. And at the time, Corona was still very, very new to us. We didn't really know the effects of it. So it was like, probably this is the best thing just for safety. We still don't think that it was going to turn into what it is now. You're just like, yeah, this is probably the best thing for safety, blah, blah, blah. And that, but I mean, Columbus was dead, man. Columbus was dead, and Columbus is a very trendy city, especially downtown, and it's a really cool city to be in downtown. A lot of cool like coffee shops and restaurants. And it was dead.
So what was your lifting experience like there then? Just like to share with, minimal people. You kind of, talked a little bit about missing your openers. Like I've done that in powerlifting before where I was like, oh damn, this meat's not going to go too good if I miss this easy weight now. Where you competed at, I think you were in, I don't know. I always get confused, like the A session, B session. You were in one of the better sessions, right? So
it was an A session. Yeah.
You were A session. So talk about like then the mindset, like maybe not like leading up to like the competition a couple days, but like what was like the temperature of the room with like other lifters
the day of?
The day of, like, was everyone like, wow, like what is going on, or just it's still a little too early, like you said? Because it seems like it's so long ago, but we've been homeschooling our kids for a month now.
I know. It's like, crazy, right?
It's been
kind of like a way of life now. Like we're used to this being the actual life. So it was kind of both. I feel like the fact that Corona or everything that was happening took my mind off the fact that I missed my opener. So I wasn't thinking about that. So that wasn't kind of like stuck in my head. I wasn't like, why did I miss this? What did I do wrong? It completely got out of my hand. The thing that they also did differently this year than they did any years before is the training hall. They did it at the Rogue gym in Columbus. So at their factory.
Cool. Yeah.
So there was more platforms. So when you got to be there, like training, you got to see a lot of international lifters as well, because they had the bronze qualifier for the Olympics. So really that kind of puts you back in the mindset of, ooh, like I'm getting to compete against, like I'm going to be like next to international lifters. And so that still got you excited. And the thing that kind of helped me a lot is kind of like we met through Instagram. I have met a lot of people into weightlifting through ever since I've kind of had my breakout. And I might either have people asking me random questions that I might be able to answer, or I've gotten in contact with people that I've been weightlifting for a while, but now we've built more of like almost like an athlete to athlete relationship, and I've got to meet those people. So that was really cool for me. So even though I didn't get to lift again in front of maybe like 1,000 people, I got to lift in front of a lot of people that I knew would be watching, which kind of helped make up for that for sure.
So is that like kind of like the club? Like, you've hit, 150, 170, like once you get to a certain level, like I asked, it's like how we met, like, hey, what kind of lifting straps do you use? Like, so is there a little bit more of like, do you think like people are going to be quicker to respond to you because, let's like, this guy's legit. Like, he's not going to ask like, silly, like, off the wall questions or whatever. Like I'll respond. Or because social media, it's cool now, right? You can reach out to anybody, like you have so much more access. But like, do you like? It sounds like you see it more as like a positive. Like I can reach out to somebody if I have a question, and they'll probably respond. Because
absolutely, yeah. So it's not even. I think weightlifting itself is a community, and it's not a huge community, right? We're not that big. But I feel like weightlifting on itself is a community. The cool thing about weightlifting is I feel like everybody into weightlifting knows kind of where they came from or how they started. So I will never not answer a question that anybody asks me. And I will never answer a question in a weird or to kind of put somebody down. Like, no, you shouldn't be asking me that question, right? Like you asked me what kind of straps you wear. And it was the simplest answer. I wear Everlast, like boxing straps, because that's what feels the best for me. And kind of just a quick brief. I've had people send me a message of, hey, like, I know you use Lift Genie all the time. Can you show me how to tape your thumb? And I'll just make a quick video and send it to them, like, just how I tape my thumb. So simple stuff like that. I feel like it's really cool within the weightlifting world that I feel like anybody would answer that in the same way I did. If you're some of the Olympians, maybe you don't see it as much because they get many messages, I'm sure, than I would. But I'm in the situation, my ultimate goal in this is to be able to coach people. So anytime somebody has a question and they want to, whatever that question might be regarding weightlifting, I'm always going to answer it. I've had people from like Australia message me before.
Well, you do have your CrossFit level 2, right? I think, right?
I got a CrossFit level 2 and my USAW-Level 2 as well.
not to like jump from Arnold, but so do you feel like the coaching, like you coaching other athletes, like has that been helpful to you on the platform? Like, if you're working with like a beginner, like is there anything that you can take away from teaching somebody how to snatch or power jerk or whatever?
Yeah.
Is it helpful to you as a coach to compete?
I will say this. I have never been as nervous on a platform as an athlete than I have been as a coach. Because at the end of the day, as an athlete, you're stepping up on the platform. You're the one touching the bar. You're the one pulling it. You're the one getting under it. You hit it or make it, you're in control of that. As much as like when I get on the platform, and it's funny because I go back and look at my videos from my lifts. I'll see like reactions that my coaches make or things that they said, and I'll literally be like, I didn't hear any of that.
Right.
I don't know what you said. I didn't hear none. I didn't even know you were talking to me.
Right.
So the nervousness that you feel as a coach when you have an athlete on the platform, it is nowhere near. I mean, it is way higher, than as an athlete.
Right.
So I think coaching, it's a very, very completely different perspective. I think the fact that I compete will help me more as a coach in the future than if coaching helps me compete, because when I coach someone, I don't think about myself at all. I don't think about what I would do in that situation, because I feel like every athlete responds differently to certain things. Right. I respond really, really good to criticism, to when my coach says, hey, you did this good, but this is what we need to do. And this is how you need to do it. I respond really good to that. Another athlete might really respond well to a lot of visual, showing them something visual, or they might need to be talked a little bit softer, depending the age of the athlete, the gender of the athlete. So many things go into it. So I feel like what I think being a coach makes you a better athlete, but just coach. I think being on the platform makes you so much of a better coach, because you know what that athlete is going through. Like, you've been through it. But as a coach, I feel like the main thing is you have to understand your athlete. You have to get to know the athlete. You don't, I could have the best program in the world. And, there's people out there that have some really, really good programs. But if you're not understanding your athletes and you just throwing them a program, in the beginning, they're going to get better, but eventually that's going to catch up. And it's like, are you really putting in the work as a coach? So I feel like coaching teaches you really more about, I think being an athlete teaches you more about coaching other athletes than being a coach will teach you yourself as an athlete.
So with that said, then what are your next steps now? Like, senior nationals is canceled. Like, there's track meets that I was going to coach some high school kids at in Florida that have already been canceled, and they're at the end of July. So for me, it's like, oh my gosh, like what's happening? Like,
what do we do?
Right. What do you do? So, do you, because of your status, like, does USA Weightlifting, have they like reached out to athletes of your, of your caliber? Is there like, these are what we're thinking, these are like next steps? Like, is there anything like that? Maybe you don't want to share, it's too like, that's confidential or something.
That's
like, I don't know.
Really great question. So USA Weightlifting is actually already taking steps, even regarding nationals this year. So they've included nationals. It's going to be done in December now, at the same time as American Open Final. So they've already kind of taken that step. And then they've already kind of told us some kind of what they're kind of looking to do in the future. So they might change the format of the American Open Series a little bit. There's a couple different things they're looking at. So maybe they're possibly doing American Open East, American Open West, and then American Open Finals. And then they're thinking about doing like a week of national championships. So like youth, juniors, and senior nationals, they would all be held in the same week. But instead of starting on Thursday, you would start on Monday. So there's different things that are going in discussion. As the athletes right now, what I feel the worst about is probably the people that were getting ready for the Olympics. That was so close for them, and they could taste it. And unfortunately, it has to happen that way. I don't think there's another option. As an athlete right now, the main focus changed and shifted really quick to I just need to be able to set up a garage gym because I didn't have a garage gym before. So I just can't not lift. That was my thing that went into my head. So it really shifted to, let me get a platform, let me get weights, let me get a bar, let me be able to train, and then I feel like everything else, you know, competition wise, you know, will take care of itself. Because we come out of this coronavirus in a couple months, let's say, you know, hopefully, and we're good to go. You know, we can start competing again. You know, I'm sure local competitions are going to start popping up all over the place, because people are going to know that people are going to want to compete. You can do a local one, and then you can, you know, you can peak for a competition really easily. So, you know, my focus right now is really just trying to lift, and try to do as much as I can. And then once we get that green light, then we'll look at competitions.
So with like, I don't want to take up, you know, too much more of your time, but I've been asking everybody kind of like to wrap up. So, I mean, I'm much older than you, so I'm not going to ask you what your age is, but like for someone
31.
who, 30, okay, so 30, so you got your start at, you know, Olympic weightlifting a little later then, right? You were in your late 20s. So for someone who might ask you, you know, Noel, like I don't know, I'm having a early, like, you know, late 20s, early life crisis. Like I've never Olympic weightlifted before. Like what are your thoughts? Like somebody who's interested in pursuing that passion? Because I mean, yours went quick, right? I mean, in 18 months, you're crushing it. So for somebody who has like a similar goal, like what advice do you have for them?
So the first thing that you're gonna want to, I'm gonna answer that. I'm gonna think about it as a coach, right?
Sure.
I'm gonna think about if somebody comes up to me and let's say 29-year-old guy or girl, and they're like, hey, I really want to get into this sport. The first thing I'm gonna ask them, or I'm gonna ask them to figure out, is what is your ultimate goal? Do you want to get in the sport and learn the sport, or do you want to compete? Like, do you want to get in the sport and, you know, really look to compete? And then depending on what that answer would be, really we would set some kind of stretch but realistic goals at the same time. At the age that I'm in, with the numbers that I have, I've already accepted the fact that I'm probably not going to be competing for the Olympics. You know, next year I'll be 32. The Olympics after that would be 4 years from there, so I'll be like 36, 37. I don't know that I'm gonna have the energy to maintain my training, clean training, you know, to be able to compete for something like that. My numbers would have to jump pretty drastically. I mean, supers in the Olympics are clean and jerking like in the 250s.
Right.
So, but I've accepted that, and I'm okay with that, because my ultimate goal is to coach and other people. So if somebody had a goal for me, they're like, no, I really want to compete into the sport. You know, let's get as much time as we can in the gym. Let's train you as much as we can. Let's work on technique as much as we can. Let's build that. We'll worry about strength later. And then we can start competing. If somebody was coming in and they're just like, I want to learn the sport, I want to enjoy it, I want to have fun with it, I want the sport to make me better athletically, then I would gear more towards focusing strictly on you know, technique. And then most of the movements would be things that help them physically, like powers. A lot of power snatches, power cleans, they're a little bit easier to learn. And they're better for you if you're trying to just become an explosive athlete. So, yeah, it depends on what they would tell me.
Yeah, right. No, that's great, because I'm always thinking like a coach too, because like I mean, with throwing, like nobody really wants to start throwing like a shot put or discus at like the age of like 40 or 50. So, but there are but the most popular age group for, you know, like USA track and field, you could start competing at masters at 30. So like 30 to 34 is the youngest age group. And the most competitors that you see at like masters championships are like the 50 to 54. Just because, you know, by that time, you know, the kids are in like high school or college, like you have more time to like compete and train, and it's like a different mindset. But I don't know, I tried like Olympic lifting when I was younger, and it just didn't, I don't know, like I never really, like I tried watching some videos, like YouTube just started, so it's like, oh, let's try. Like, you know, 2000 was like 4 or 5, like we kind of did in college, but nobody, like, you know, it was a small Division III school. Like we didn't have a strength and conditioning coach. Now, like almost every high school and where I live here has a strength and conditioning coach. So a lot has changed, but you know, it's always something that I've wanted to do, but I think my time, I think it's past.
And I'm not going to lie to you. It's the reason why I got into it so late was kind of because of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had thought about it in my earlier 20s when I was first getting into CrossFit
Mm-hmm.
to get into weightlifting, because I knew I was good at it. Not good, I knew I was strong.
Right.
So I knew if I would find a gym or anything. But at the time, it's kind of like what you said. YouTube was not really a big thing. Google,
Right.
like people use Google, but
Right.
Google is not what it is today, or any search engine. So
Right.
I had thought about getting into it, but I did not know where to go. Like I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know where to find someone that
Right.
knew about it, and it just wasn't available. And I think that's one of the great things that CrossFit has done for the sport of weightlifting.
Yep.
It has made it a lot more mainstream
Mm-hmm.
than what it used to be. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just think about where Rogue used to be 10 years ago to where Rogue is now with the Olympic lifting stuff. You know, 10 years
Right.
ago, Rogue was strictly mostly powerlifting,
Mm-hmm.
powerlifting equipment, and the Arnolds, because it was just strictly powerlifting. So,
Right.
You know, when I was 28, 29, that's when really I had the ability to go search stuff and be
Mm-hmm.
able to find a gym and a coach and everything. And
Mm-hmm.
before, I mean, I'm sure they were available. I just didn't know how to go about it. So a lot of times you'll see that people are getting into it at a later age because of that, and it's perfectly fine.
Right.
I had, right before I went to Arnold's, before the whole Corona thing became very crazy, I had an athlete, a young lady messaged me on Instagram saying, "Hey, I am 36 years old. I want to qualify for Masters Nationals for next year."
Mm-hmm.
And we were like getting ready to go to work and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to work together. And then this stuff happened. So unfortunately, she just doesn't have a gym to train at right away. But I mean, as soon as this stuff's over, we're going to pick back up. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of one to give you an idea or a situation to where she told me flat out what she wanted to do.
Right.
She already kind of has a little bit of a CrossFit background, so she knows weightlifting, the idea of it. So for her, it'd be, let's get to work. For somebody that just wants to, I want to learn what it is and just become better at it.
Right.
You'd be doing a lot of PVC work.
Yeah, right. Well, I went to Masters Nationals a couple of years ago. It was up here in Western New York and in Buffalo, and it was so fun to watch. Like not so much like the actual like competition, but like there were dads that had like their you know their wives, and like they had like 2 or 3 or 4 kids, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like how in the world, like how are they able to do it? And my wife and I, we only had 2 at the time, so I'm like, oh my gosh, like adding a third, like this would be like nuts. But you see it so more frequently now where people are posting that, where they have like their kids in the background. Like that's one of you know, since my wife and I have been homeschooling for a month, during the day I bring the kids in the garage. Like we have a garage gym, so I park outside in the winter and like work out and stuff. Like I bring the kids out there, so they all have their own PVC pipe. They have their own boxes. Like we have you know, the plastic kettlebells for the baby, and we do our thing. But I just, but I'm not, like I said, like I'm not competitive anymore. But watching like the people that actually compete at Masters, it's so inspiring. 'Cause like if they can do it, like why
absolutely
am I
inspiring.
complaining? Like my garage is 2 feet away, you know, outside the kitchen. Like I should be lifting every night. But
the way I see it is, I think about it this way: it's somebody that's done it before. A lot of those people that you see now, they've done some kind of sports before, so they have that kind of that fire inside that's like, ooh, competition, ooh, I get to compete, I get to beat another person, you know. And how cool is it to be able to do it at that age, and your kids be able to watch you do that? You know, your kids will be like, wow, I thought my dad would just, you know, did paperwork all day long, but look at what my dad can do, right? Like how cool it is as to have that fire and be able to have your family or your kids be able to be like, whoa, my dad can do some pretty cool things, and still be able to compete. You know, what Nationals was going to be in Orlando this year, so that was going to be very close to where I live. That's where my gym is actually based out of, so I was going to go help out and coach there. So as of right now, they've combined it with Masters Worlds, which is still supposed to be in Orlando this year. So if everything goes as planned, we're probably going to have a really big August in Orlando, and that'll be extremely fun to watch. But I follow a lot of Masters lifters, man, because like what we do for Masters, like your body, and I tell you that myself because I've seen it in the 2 to 3 years that I've competed, is my body's does not heal the way it used to heal, does not recover the way it used to recover before. So to see them be able to push through that, it's inspiring more than anything.
Right.
So,
Well, wait till you have 2 or 3 kids jumping on you.
I don't know if I'll be able to do it.
Or walking through. Like, that's the one rule that I have. Like, if I'm squatted, I'm like, okay, guys, like, you have to stay still. Like, you can't like cross, just just in case.
Sure.
But no, it's fun. But Noel, thank you so much for taking the taking the time tonight, and hopefully we'll be able to do this again in the future.
Absolutely, man. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.